What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Now we are joined by Neil and 10th Man Rising, together with a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome one and all.
Good morning. Good morning.
Well, did I just hear Neil and 10th Man? That's it? And G Plus? Oh, there's a union meeting today.
No, we've got Adam as well. He just hasn't been let in yet. There he is. Hey, Adam.
Oh, there he is. Good.
Union meeting. I don't want anything to do with paying any dues, that's for sure.
I think it's in reference to me saying, you know, there is occasions where I physically can't have a show, and that's just unacceptable, apparently. That's a bit of housekeeping.
No, I'm talking about what a guys ain't here. There should be more than just me, 10th, and Adam. Everybody's getting docked a day's wage.
No obligation for anybody. Same goes for Discord. You know, if you don't come, that's fair enough. There's no pressure. You don't have to be here, Neil. It's okay. If
Hang on. I didn't know there was a wage. Now I'm willing to pay dues.
Yeah, there's no wage. Hence no obligation. If there was a wage, you'd definitely be obliged to be here. Anyway, let's do a bit of housekeeping. Any evidence of the distance to the sun?
Well, you'd have to have a radius to an Earth, which is what they use as part of the whole calculation. So do we have a radius of the Earth, and the Earth is a sphere?
Would I need to know it to do celestial navigation?
Would you need to know the distance to the sun to do celestial navigation? No, you wouldn't. I'm actually doing an edited video on that exact subject right now. So there was a whole load of meat on that bone from Matthew Learns. And what I've done is I've taken a section of the live stream when Eli specifically corners him about height not being used, and he admits it, only to then go into the after show several hours later, admittedly, and start debating about how you don't need 90 to the surface at the GP point, etc., etc. So there was those two sections that were quite far apart in time that have been sandwiched together because obviously they're on the exact same subject, which is about the height of the star. So I haven't actually finished it. I'm nowhere near finishing editing. It's going to end up being about a 30-minute video in total. But, you know, well worth the wait. That'll be out, hopefully, whenever it's out. I don't know. I've got a lot on at the moment. Anyway, yes. So that height, no, you don't need a height, Neil. It's the distance along the ground to the GP position, so you can triangulate your position with it.
I think they're missing it, that it's an angular relationship above the horizon. And they keep wanting to convolute it by saying distance, but then they haven't done celestial navigation because, like you said, all the citations, and Matthew Learns even agreed, that's not necessary.
Any evidence, as we're talking about, of an elevation angle measurement acquisition from a curved baseline?
Well, that's impossible. And that's why they have to draw the tangent planes every time they want to show in the image for celestial navigation a vertex. And then they transpose it to the geocentric equatorial plane and say that's where it's originating from. Even though we drew it up here, almost 4,000 miles above it, the distances are so far that it's minimal. So you can just assume you were in hell taking the angle.
Yeah, we're not. Light being parallel is the main aspect that we get focused on in that edited video. I haven't quite finished making yet. But yeah, in respect to, there's no height needed at all in celestial navigation for the star that you're measuring. You're trying to find out the distance to the ground position of the star. That's where the star's over. That's what you're trying to measure. That's the distance that you're trying to get when you do the calculations after measuring your elevation angle measurement off a flat Earth. So with that being the case, you don't need it. Meanwhile, Matthew immediately appeals to, well, it doesn't work properly. What's that doesn't work properly? Well, celestial navigation doesn't work properly. Why not? Well, because it doesn't use the height. And on a globe, I need to use the height and immediately assume that it's an infinite distance away.
Yeah, I
Well,
was just going to ask you, are they being stubborn about it because they do have a claimed height of the sun?
no, they don't have. If you look at the slide, that's
Let me just explain the answer quickly. It's because they're going to move the angle that you took off the surface off a flat Earth to the centre of a sphere Earth, so that the angle through the protractor or through the sextant becomes the Earth's turning about its axis for the angle. So the angle comes from hell, but that makes Earth the protractor, doesn't it? Here you go, on screen now, flat Earth elevation angle measurement to the sun. On the right, angle moving to the centre of a sphere Earth, well, necessitating parallel light and the assumption of an infinite distance. Meanwhile, to get the distance to the GP below this sun on the left-hand diagram, for the sake of argument, you don't need the height of the sun.
Yeah, I got it.
You remember the one thing that someone did a long time ago, where they had a room with a light in the middle of the room on the ceiling, and the objects that were directly under the light, there was no shadow cast, but the objects further away on the extremities, no matter what part of the room, there was a shadow cast. And so what they need is a curving Earth to explain. And it comes up in today's review video, which is hilarious because he doesn't get his facts right. That's Larry Krauss when we play that. But the point is, this Eratosthenes assumption that he had first, that I live on the globe and sunlight has to come in parallel. And then he looks at a shadow of, say, 7 degrees or whatever it was. It says, oh, that's because the ground is curving away 500 miles from the point of origin. It's like, what? Why would you assume that? And so when the sun's setting in the afternoon and the trees are casting long shadows on the surface of the earth, instead of realizing the sun is moving, and it's a much closer sun than their 93 million mile, that's what's causing the shadows, just like the light in the room. So they need to change it, that the shadows is because the earth is curving. Well, wonderful then. Black swan time. Based on your number of 3959, geometric horizon must be here and no further than here. So let's see if it blocks the bottoms of boats and buildings. Oops, it doesn't. So you don't have a curving earth to use this light parallel argument anymore.
You can probably see whizzing by in the chat now as we speak. There's a link to, what is it? Oh, I've pressed the wrong button on my Stream Deck. 1 second. That's not changing my screen. Very strange. Okay. Looks like my Stream Deck's locked up for some unknown reason. Not a good start to our live stream. How long we've been going? About 8 minutes. Wonderful. See if I can fix that. Can you talk amongst yourselves for 2 minutes just while I see?
Yeah. Hey, Adam, you available to talk or you working? Going once. Neil, you working too?
Yeah, nobody's free to talk. It's fine.
I'm here. It's working? Okay.
I think it's just my preview screen that had crashed, actually. So I've got an issue with OBS, but the live stream's still going out, so fine. Okay, so this is this video that's going to be whizzing on by in the... Let's see if I can now do that. Give it one more try. There it is. Right, you can see in the live stream chat, finally got there, a link to this video. So Joe Rogan and Lawrence Krauss on why flat earthers exist. Okay, so let them know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. Let's just drop them a comment so that they know we've responded. The idea being, entirely selfish, if they were to respond, heaven forbid, they'd put a link to my video. and give us some of the algorithmic love we do not receive as flat earthers. So let's get into this.
What year's the video first before you go? How long ago?
6 years.
Wow. Okay.
Why'd you ask?
Because we're going to hear a lot of nonsense.
Well, you don't have to wait 6 years to hear it.
It's true.
Weak bitches. One of the biggest issues I think that people are having with religion in the 21st century is these areas where you're not allowed to question and explore, that things hit these walls where this is God's will and this is the way it is.
And in my mind, what we say, that is just code word for I don't want to think about it.
Right. Well, it's too confusing, it's too complicated.
Or too terrifying.
Too terrifying.
And
right.
Or people say, and this amazes me, I get people saying, you will never understand the origin of the universe. You'll never understand what love is. Science will never, ever explain love.
Is love a phenomenon? This is quite a good question.
Can you see it? Can you see it?
See what?
Can you observe it? No, I don't think it is. I think love is 100% correct there. You can't science love. It's hard enough to define it and get two people to give you the same definition. So I would say no.
Yeah, but all of the
I don't
questions,
know.
See results for
that's
love.
not what I'm driving at, Adam. I'm driving at the question he's asking in the way they're phrased is to imply that certain things in the same categories would be able to be explained by science and certain things wouldn't. But none of the things that he's offered, because with love, you could say there's something that you can observe happening, right? Between two people that you could.
Yeah.
I know it's weak. I'm not trying to make it strong, and that's not what I'm trying to do here. I'm just saying that when you're talking about cause and effect relationships with science, that isn't comparable to saying love isn't capable of being put through the method. Because he's not saying that, is he? He's just saying science can't give you an answer for love or whatever it is he's just said.
Yeah, but he started by saying the origin of the universe and science. So now he just jumps to love.
Okay.
Science will never, ever explain X.
Well, what will?
And then I say to them, well, that's incredibly a pompous statement.
That was a better statement. Science will never explain X. Well, no, X could be a phenomena, in which case it's perfectly within the realms of science to try and explain what causes X, if X is the phenomena that you're studying. So I sensed he would be in a category error, and he is, and he's just proven it with that last statement. People ask why science can't prove X. What if scurvy is X? Was that proven in terms of the cause thereof? Yeah, it was. Saved many lives. So X, if you insert scurvy, would be perfectly scientifically validatable, wouldn't it? You can put it through the method, and it was. But that's not what he's doing. Do you know what I'm getting at, Adam?
Replay that part again. Let it play through. I think he's trying to say, I can't remember. It's been a while.
Understand what love is. Science will never, ever explain love. Science will never, ever explain X.
Well, what will?
And then I say to them, well, that's incredibly a pompous statement. Because if you say that science will never explain this, you must understand it. Because how do you know that we'll never explain it?
What? If you've got a phenomena that occurs and you don't know what caused it, he's suggesting that by saying, well, science hasn't explained the cause of this effect yet, well, then you must know the answer to... What the hell is he babbling about?
Now you got to realize he's an atheist. He's a science guy, and science is his God, small g. So he's got to give some validity to what he's going to say later in this interview. So he's just saying, well, just because some people say science won't explain X, well, I'm here to tell you something different because that's my God, and I don't need anything else. So he's building something here to what he's going to say later, I believe, if I remember it.
As I say, I've got a semi-crash of OBS, so just let me know in the live stream if everything seems fine. It seems fine from my end on the non-preview screen.
Yeah, I'm watching you on YouTube on my phone. Things are moving. So
Looks all right. Okay.
We never know what we won't
Morning,
be able to
guys.
explain until we
Hey, chocolate.
try. And maybe there are things about our universe that we'll never understand. But we don't know until we try. You can never say up front that science will never explain this or that.
Really? Okay. I mean, I tried to fight against this once with the second law of thermodynamics, or you could insert any natural law, which is a description of something that occurs always. And if you're going to say, okay, it's unreasonable to say that you'll never explain something that is described as a phenomena, but having been shown or proven wrong by people smarter than me, I'm going to go with no, there are certain circumstances where it is reasonable to say that science isn't ever going to offer you an answer for something. For example, if I give you an example within the context of the second law of thermodynamics, why does hot always go to cold? Why does that happen? In other words, what causes entropy? The answer will always elude you, because to reverse the arrow of time means to get back to the ontological primitives. Big Bang versus an external force creator. Okay, that's where you get, if you rewind the arrow of time, well, then you're left with the, will nature violate its own natural laws by creating itself, first law of thermodynamics violation, or by pure non-capability of nature violating its own laws of nature, you are only left with the alternative as a solution to this problem. What started the process of entropy going? An external force to the system that we are in. There can be no other answer, because the only other answer is the alternative in the ontological primitives. Nature created itself. That's Big Bang, by the way. Well, Lemaitre isn't correct when he's violating a first law, the first law, in terms of energy not being able to create itself. It directly violates that law. Okay. Anyone wants to add before I spin on?
Isn't basically what causes entropy God? I mean, God
Yeah, that's what you
created
said.
matter and all of physical existence, and physical existence is like subjected to entropy. Physical existence doesn't exist without it. Well, since God created physical existence, well, then He also created entropy.
Can you
Very
prove
simple.
that?
Is it Werner Heisenberg? Is it Heisenberg that said something along the lines of, the first sip of the cup of natural science will make you an atheist, but at the bottom of that cup, God is waiting for you?
Sounds a very sensible statement.
I don't know who that is. If QE was here, he'd say, no, that is actually... I don't know.
Because you haven't tried. And in my experience as a scientist, I've been,
What's Krauss done scientifically? Anybody know? Not going to just outright say he's not. Has he validated cause and effect relationships through systematic experimentation? That's scientific prediction. Hypothesis. Has he done that? Ever? Do we know?
The only times I've seen him is on YouTube videos fighting against the existence of a creator and talking about the heliocentric and dark matter and all this kind of stuff. So I don't know what he's actually done.
But if somebody would say in my presence, in my experience as a scientist, my reflex would now be, oh, really? What was your independent variable?
No.
And
No.
then they'll be like,
Well, okay,
science is
I
Oh, you're a
disagree.
scientist. Well, that
Hold on,
means you would
hold on.
have to have done
Hold on,
the scientific
hold on.
method, right?
5 times, 6 times. Hold on. I'm going to agree with Arwen's sentiment, which is absolutely on the money. But the question's just wrong, because you'd start by asking what the phenomena is, because then you're not just being rude. In other words, oh, really? You're a scientist. What's the phenomena you were studying to establish the cause of, if you wanted to be rude? Now, obviously, you're going to segue onto that because your natural instinct says, oh, scientist. Therefore, the person varying and manipulating that which they assume causes an effect they're studying in nature, because that's a scientist. So what was the effect you were studying in nature is the polite question to ask somebody in that circumstance, Arwen. But I knew what you were driving at, and you are right. I just wanted to get the question right. What's the phenomena? Step 1 in the method, Arwen, is observe a phenomena.
Sorry.
Go on.
I just want to say, because the point is a natural phenomenon occurring, that still doesn't immediately point directly to the original scientific method. But if you say independent variable, that's like an intricate mechanical aspect of it that cannot be misinterpreted. While if you just say natural phenomenon, they could still insert the nonsense about, oh, you just observe the natural phenomenon, you draw a conclusion,
enough.
and then it works,
I
right?
gotcha. No, that's fair enough. You're saying you must contextualize it with the scientific vernacular it warrants. In other words, you'd say, oh, right, what was your dependent variable that you were studying?
Right, to get to the core mechanics of the scientific method.
Yes, it puts them into a position where when you ask them for a dependent variable, by implication that is the natural phenomena, by the way, but Arwin's saying it contextualizes it such that they can't weasel their way out of it by giving you something through a telescope that isn't going to have an independent variable stacked up next to it with a null. That's the contrapositive zero difference result. If they can't give you all of that after asking it contextually as a dependent variable rather than phenomena observed, because that's how we do it with the pink writing, right? What's the natural phenomena if you're claiming science? But you, with a scientist, you got to be right hyper-specific, Arwin? What was the dependent variable you were studying? That's fascinating. Scientists, you say. Dependent variable, please.
Well, when you ask it like that, you immediately, by using that specific word, test if they do actually know the specific scientific method.
Yeah.
Nathan,
Arwen, they'll just, sorry, Tom. I was just going to say, Arwen, they'll just say, excuse me, I just looked at this light in the sky and I named it science, baby.
yeah. So cursory research on internet. Lawrence Krauss, American theoretical physicist and cosmologist who previously taught at Arizona State University. Another thing about him is that he had a podcast called Origins. And then another thing about him is he's famous for putting science before God. So he's gonna fall into that Michio Kaku quote.
Okay, he's a theoretical physicist and cosmologist. Okay, we'll ask the housekeeping question then. Any single viable hypothesis from any of the fields of astronomy, cosmology, or astrophysics?
None.
Nope, they don't manipulate anything other than math.
I will repeat. I looked up at this light in the sky and I named it Science is Back, baby.
Science is back, baby. Science is back.
So all they have is a phenomena looking at a light in the sky, and that's it. They can't do anything after that. So strike out.
There could have been brick walls, but I've watched progressively those brick walls crumble as we move around them or we break them. And it is so exhilarating, and that's why it's the greatest story ever told. It's so exhilarating to see them knocked down and things you thought we'd never understand. I remember one of the forces of nature, a very prominent physicist in the
Pan says it's going to be gravity.
1960s or early 1969 said it will be 100 years before we understand this interaction. Next year, the theory came out, and it's so wonderful to see.
Theory of what in 1970? What's he referring to?
See how the story surmounts the biases and the anticipation of individual scientists. That's the greatest story ever told so far.
Well, what's ridiculous about saying no one will ever figure anything out is that what we've figured out over the last 200 years is monumental, and that human language has only been around for 40,000.
Yeah.
Did you hear that little slight? The greatest story ever told was the differences between scientists. He's known for attacking people who have faith. And so, of course, the story of Jesus, the greatest story ever told. So that was not by mistake there.
Okay. Joe Rogan has then gone on to oversimplify it and say, well, science doesn't prove anything. Is that where he's being led? Because obviously I've got a different mindset to how somebody who's agreeable, in this case Joe, would be led by Lawrence in this instance. So I'm a bit at a loss to why Joe has managed to oversimplify this into science doesn't prove anything, which is the general crux of what he's just said in an oversimplified manner after being led by Lawrence. And you're like, man, I don't think I'd have been led there, but maybe they were chatting before the show. I don't know. Anyway.
1,000.
Absolutely.
Go on. Got somebody? No.
If we live another 50,000 years, 100,000 years,
as long as we don't as long as we keep open inquiry. You could imagine moving. I mean, look, we went through a few hundred years of the Middle Ages where the incredible inquiry-based civil culture of the Greeks was just forgotten. I mean, the Greeks had determined the circumference of the earth, not only that it was round, but what its circumference was by.
See, there you go. That's a begging the question fallacy for you.
Oh, really?
No, they
No,
didn't.
it's gonna get funny. It's gonna get funny here.
No, they measured a flat Earth. That's what they did.
Simple measurements that were.
He said,
Of a flat Earth. Go on, chocolate.
I'm just laughing. He said round, not spherical.
Right. Yeah, these assertions that are used colloquially the world over are used to infer, as Lawrence Krauss has just done, that their presuppositions and calculations based on those begging the question fallacies, presuppositions, lead to the proof that we are definitely spherical. That's how it's been asserted. The reason I bring this up is because Matthew Learns was under the misapprehension that as long as you don't declare that you're proving the sphere, as Lawrence just did, it's not a begging the question fallacy. Now, if for the sake of argument, he just gave the evidence of the Greeks measuring circumference, he doesn't have to conclude sphericity for it to be a begging the question fallacy. It's assumed. We can demonstrate that. Now, assumed after taking angle measurements from flat planes, that's what's actually occurring. So Earth is measured flat. Now, you can hear the smile in my voice because the more time progresses, the more confident everybody on the panel will become with this. Now, I only really noticed that editing the video I've been talking about on this show so far. In that video, what I noticed while I was editing it was that everybody around me was just as insistent as I about the fact that this is a measurement of Earth and the measurement is flat. Everything about the measurement requires Earth to be flat, and the acquisition of the measurements are going to give you the ability to navigate on a flat plane. Now, to try and decry that into a calculation, because that's all you ever do if you're on a sphere, and in fact, in this instance, you're going to take your begging the question fallacy of a sphere and superimpose the flat Earth measurements you've just taken off a plane into that begging the question fallacy, is unnecessary to have a conclusion made. Once you assume the outcome, in this case sphericity, Earth being a sphere, so long as you have that automatic assumption, you can literally, in the mind's eye of anybody who's listening and is a baller, take that assumption forward and then measure a flat plane and still be on a sphere, even though you've just measured Earth flat. That is the mentality of begging the question. Well, if Earth's a sphere, then I will measure it flat, move the angles to the centre of a sphere, and use the Earth that's redundant in reference to the ground, that's an equatorial plane, as a protractor. Redundant other than giving you the angle out beyond the ground I'm not standing on because I'm in hell now. Like, okay, so your mentality leads you to measuring a flat Earth, using a flat plane inside a ball. Also, you can assume that you're on a ball. And Krauss explicitly stated it, unlike other people who think that not stating it as an outcome is not a begging the question fallacy, which is wrong. There you go, done. Whoever that was, go ahead.
Yeah, that was me. Isn't technically something already presupposing the Earth is spherical, not just if they don't mention that conclusion, but even if any element in their argument actually contains sphere presuppositional systems, right? If anything that you're using in your argument uses some kind of spherical presupposition, then it all becomes begging the question.
Correct. So that's why the best example of that is always orbits. And I remember QE doing it with somebody, debating them, and just immediately, as soon as they said the word, he slapped them down with begging the question immediately, as soon as they said just one word. Well, in orbit,
Right.
Stop. Everything you're about to say is a begging the question fallacy right off the bat. Everything will fail because of this word you've just used. Presupposing Kepler's orbital motion. Go ahead, Owen.
Or the second you claim the horizon is geometric would be an example.
Yeah, another example, exactly. I assume that the horizon represents a physical geometric sphere edge blocking the boats and buildings in the distance. Okay, well, that's based on your assumption that Earth is a sphere with a physical geometric sphere edge for a horizon at 1.2 times the square root of the observer site in feet, as per your assumption. So when you see a clock and it's not there because it should be blocked in your presupposition that there's going to be a sphere edge blocking the clock, then you will make up a reason for why it's not blocked with the sphere presupposition in mind, aka refraction. Well, if I assume Earth's a sphere and I see it not being sphere-shaped, then it's because of the refraction that's sphere-shaped, making it not look sphere-shaped. Therefore, Earth's a sphere.
Don't forget how he started. It's the same thing Danny Faulkner does, because it's scientism that invades our culture right now. He's talking about the Greeks. Now, we're talking about 2,500 years ago, right? And so what was the story that he's about to go into is Eratosthenes, and he screws that up royally, but he's going to mention that story. And what was the finding of Eratosthenes? He assumed the Earth is sphere to begin with, taking the question, and then he assumed that light was coming in parallel. And then he looked at a shadow from a stick. And he says, well, over here in Cyan, the sun is directly over this well, 90 degrees. And I got a shadow over here 500 miles away at this angle, 7.2 degrees, I believe. And so that's because the Earth is curving, because I assumed the Earth is a sphere. This is what he's referencing as lost knowledge from the Greeks. This story is so convoluted with makeup stuff that here we are 2,500 years later, we can't show a geometric horizon blocking the bottoms of boats and buildings where it's supposed to be based on that history of the Greeks, that if it's true, is 1.22 miles at 1 foot observer height. But it's not, because it's not geometric. So they all go back to the Greeks, some story about a guy, and then you say, well, what about today? Can't we prove the Earth is a globe today with the height of an eye and the distance you're looking at, where the curvature, the horizon is supposed to be geometric? That's where the blockage has to start, but it's not. You can just throw out the whole story at this point.
This is when I have to refer to the biggest doublespeak. Now that we want to bring up the Greeks, Mr. Krauss or whatever his name is. Remember that textbook I told you guys about that in the school? Let me read that one more time. Can you see it? It's called. Look out your window. What do you see? Is it flat or round? If you look out your window, you will see land for a distance that is flat. Maybe you might see a hill or a mountain. You could probably make your own map of what you see. What you don't see is anything round like a globe. So how were globes invented? Second paragraph. More than 2,000 years ago, the Greeks used observation skills and math to figure out the shape and size of our planet. They invented globes, but it took hundreds more years before most people believed that the Earth was round.
Well,
Anybody spot the problem with that?
Yeah, right off the bat. If you look out your window, you see flat. The Greeks used observation. Well, what did they see out their window?
Flat. No, there's more truth in that than you realise. They looked out, saw it flat, measured it flat, and then invented globes. That is the true chronological series of events. Doesn't matter if they say it's the Greeks. Doesn't matter when that actually happened in time. But that is the chronological order. Look at it flat, realise it's flat, measure it flat. Now turn that flatness into a sphere. That's what they've told them in that story. And they did it with observations. And they've just been told the observations were of it flat. Yes. So it's pretty accurate, actually, Chocolate. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah. That all checks out.
I'm not saying it checks out. I'm saying that's the chronological. If you're talking about the story of a swindle, this is the story of the swindle. It doesn't mean it checks out, in the respect that swindles.
Yeah, I see what you mean. I just love the irony that the last sentence of the first paragraph is what you don't see is anything round like a globe. And then the very next sentence is more than 2,000 years ago, the Greeks used observation, which again, they even highlighted after telling you that they didn't see anything like a globe, but they used observation to invent a globe. It's great. But yeah, you're right. When you talk about the swindle, they threw a little bit of truth in there. So
Then not accepted because of dogma. So we have to, if we want to progress, we have to beware of dogma.
How did they figure out the circumference of the Earth?
Oh, it's really neat. I think it was.
Okay, so you see, he's always attacking people of faith. So obviously, there's dogma is a word in that genre. But I want to say, what's the dogma we get from pseudoscientists? They have a lot of dogma, and we've been fighting their dogma for years now in flat Earth debates. And so a lot of what he does is just project their own situation onto what he must do, which is make the creator irrelevant and put science before a creator. And he does this all the time.
he's about to get into the dogma because it's about to get juicy. Joe just asked him, how did they figure out the circumference of the Earth?
Yeah, you're right.
This is about to
I
get
forget
good.
which of the
Yeah, it's going to get so good. He screws
It's amazing.
It up.
Well, what he said was, look, so at a certain time of day, a certain time of the year, the sun is directly overhead at 12 noon. Okay? And I can tell that by looking down a deep well, and I see the reflection of the sun exactly in that deep well. Okay? So the rays of the sun, which are coming down in the same direction towards the Earth everywhere,
Just drops in his begging the question fallacy. Oh, they're all coming down parallel, are they? All right. I wonder why I dropped that in.
it comes down to the deep well. But 100 miles away, the well, because the surface of the Earth is curved, the well is pointing in a little bit different direction. So the sun's rays come at a slightly different angle.
Angle, you say?
Angle?
Yeah.
But that number one, he said 100 miles away when it's 500. And then he said angle. Gone.
Yeah, the angle that he's measuring is the difference with respect to the horizontal baseline. So he's talking about an angle measurement off a flat Earth that is then later taken to assume that the protractor is actually the surface of the Earth itself. So in the most crude sense, that's what's being done in this little magic trick. They're saying you measure an angle off the surface. And that angle is going to be two straight lines, not one that's curved. The baseline is going to be straight. Now, when you then take the angle and put it in the center of a sphere Earth and rotate that sphere Earth, as he just says, well, it's because on the other end of that curved line, the well's pointing towards the center of Earth at a different point. Only if you've rotated the protractor of Earth rather than the protractor of what you were holding when you measured your angle. So it's a transposition from flat to sphere by making the Earth the protractor.
So on this day, I will measure that the sun is directly overhead for me, but I'll get my friend 100 miles away to measure the angle of the sun relative to the well. And that tells you that the Earth is curved. And if you do the geometry, you can work out if the 100 miles of the Earth's surface causes the sun's rays to suddenly be at that angle, how curved the Earth is and what the circumference of the Earth is. It's plain geometry that in principle any high school student could do.
But when you say 100 miles away,
Are utilizing flat Earth angles, though. So while he says it's going to the presupposed center of the well, when you're transposing an angle that's being measured off the surface, because then you've got the well pointing to the center of Earth. I'm just repeating myself.
first of all, how are they communicating?
Did he just use the word plane geometry?
Yeah, I think he might have done.
Yeah, I heard that.
Rays to suddenly be at that angle, how curved the Earth is and what the circumference of the Earth is. It's plain geometry that in principle any
Plane geometry of a plane? Yeah. I mean, they just drop in the subtle tells. Yeah, it is plane geometry. That was my point. I should have paid more attention to what he said. I'm glad you caught that.
high school student could do.
But when
What you could do, yeah, off a plane with this plane geometry. Yeah. It'd need a flat plane, though.
you say 100 miles away, first of all, how are they communicating with this guy
They
100
didn't.
miles away?
They're not immediately, but the guy writes it down, and then he takes
Okay.
a horse, and they come and compare notes later.
And they use a sundial to determine the time?
The sundial to determine the time, and the
Wow.
He takes a horse.
Carrier pigeon, man.
This is just a part of the narrative that they wanted us to take apart back in 2015. Oh, well, how does he communicate? Has he got a cell phone? He gives a crap. He's measuring an angle off a flat Earth.
But 100 miles away,
Sorry, go on.
would there be a deviation at all in the time, a minute or two?
well, but so to some accuracy,
Right.
you get it wrong to some accuracy.
Right.
But they did pretty damn well. They came up with the circumference of the Earth was darn close to the circumference of the Earth.
Oh, really? And can we have that measurement, please? The one that you say it's pretty close to. Can you tell us where that's been measured? See, what we get is people offering up these stories of olden times when people assumed Earth's a sphere, measured the flat Earth, and then said that it's the circumference of a spherical surface, that they just measured flat. Then we say, okay, it's not a very good measurement, flawed for all the reasons that Joe's put forth, that are there intentionally to be taken apart. Okay. But at that point, he says, no, but it's pretty good. It was pretty close to the actual measured circumference. Where's that?
What they came up with.
Nathan,
Yeah.
you know it's only about 5% off.
Exactly. 5%. It was within 5%. Well, okay. Let's see that measurement then. So we can compare and see if it's within 5% of the measurement that this was in 5% of.
Nah.
Well, come on, Nathan. It was pretty good what they came up with.
No,
In other words, what they made up.
No, they had to back engineer the spherical surface that they're inventing from minimum angles to Polaris. So if you have Polaris at your zenith, 90 degrees to your position, or if you're lying on your back on the ground, you'd be looking directly up at Polaris. It's 1 degree for every 60 nautical miles you back away. In other words, Polaris will drop towards the horizon for 1 degree every time you back away from its 60 nautical miles. Right to the equator. Well, you can then convert that flat Earth angle measurement off a plane to a sphere, with the outside extremity, the point where Polaris reaches the horizon, as the equator. Well, then you've got your outside edge of a sphere. Okay. But you've measured flat Earth concepts to give you not only the time that they're appealing to, something I'd never considered, but it's only my first time in probably 4 years of considering this crappy attached to the argument in the first place for it to be argued about whether or not he was able to communicate from the well to Cyan. Well, horseback is what we've got from this guy. Who cares? It's not relevant when you're measuring flat Earth angles and using a delineation of the time that's also come from flat Earth concepts of the movement of the celestial items to give us this concept. So like in this description, no, the time was just them logging their position and time of day and then checking it a year later at a different location 500 miles away or 500 stadia or whatever it is they give it as. 100 miles. Whatever, Lawrence. Doesn't matter. Because if we focus on that, it's like, let's major on the minors when they're measuring a flat Earth. That's all that's relevant here.
That's the main point. But if memory serves me right, it was 5,000 stadia, which is 500 miles, basically, best round out number that most sites give us. And it's the high noon in Cyan, where the well is, and in Alexandria, 500 miles away. Where's the sun at high noon? So you just have to go there at high noon and know that high noon over there is directly over the well. Where is it at high noon? It casts a shadow on the stick, 7.2 degrees. Oh, the Earth is curved. What?
Yeah, we got an angle.
You could say that
off.
point. Sorry.
Go on, Chocolate, you go.
No, I was just gonna say you could say that point's irrelevant, right? But I think because Joe is like kind of a normie, like that's a question anybody would ask, right? Like, how is it back in the day that the time period you're talking about, these people are communicating with each other? Like, that's a question normal people would ask if you were to, you know, I know Joe's very into his heliocentric nonsense, but like I don't see a problem with asking that question as a norm. Because I'd have that question. That's why we make the joke. How do they do it? Carrier pigeon, cell phone? Like, how the hell did they do that back then?
I agree.
Horseback.
It's intentionally folded into the argument so that it's a minor for you to major on when you try and take it apart. Because ultimately you can say, look, you might demean the methodology, but it's still within 5% of the measurement. What measurement?
And so it's amazing that they use these techniques.
So they were just so confused and so curious about it all. They just tried to figure out there's got to be a way to figure this out.
Well, and they didn't, and they weren't they weren't forced with the dogma that the earth is flat.
Right.
As I'm told today, you were dealing with some people who are still forced with that dogma.
It's very
How's it dogma when you've just described a load of flat earth measurements?
Projection.
Yeah,
No, again-
you're reliant on measuring a flat earth, right? It's just plain geometry, right? Simple high
Let
schooler
me
could do
read.
it.
I'm sorry. Let me read what I read in the pre-show. This is what he's referring to. More than anything else, the Copernican revolution that ushered in the Enlightenment was responsible for creating skepticism about the intellectual and moral authority of the Christian tradition. If the church's adoption of Aristotle's geocentric view of the universe could be shown to be wrong by the heliocentric theory, then what else did the church get wrong? If the biblical story of creation was not accurate, what else was misleading in the Bible? This is Lawrence Krauss. Make no mistake about it. He hates any person of faith or the faith itself. I can't say the person. And he's always attacking the biblical account. So when he says dogma, that's what he's referring to. But he's the one with the dogma. He's projecting.
Wonder where he got all these thoughts to make these statements.
Who cares? Why are you trying to divine his thoughts? Bloody hell, chocolate. You were doing so well.
Not trying to divine them, just trying to figure out where he got them from, being that he's such an atheist.
Now I'm lost. I don't understand.
Darwin and all those people who didn't want a creator
Oh,
and needed
gotcha. You're saying where he got it from?
Thank you,
Oh,
Sam.
from the dogma from these other folks. That's what you're driving at, right, chocolate?
Pretty much.
very strange.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that in
Oh, it's so ridiculous.
2017?
Feelings. How do you feel about it? Who cares?
It's
The-
amazing.
No,
But, you know,
that's not-
nothing's...
That's not what he was driving at.
What was he driving at?
Thoughts are immaterial. Atheist religion, they can't have anything immaterial. Right?
There you go.
Chocolate?
So as he's saying these things like, oh, there's no such thing as God, science before God, all that. Yeah. Where you got all those thoughts from?
Oh, right. Where did you get all those supernatural ideas that don't exist in your heliocentric worldview? You're having thoughts. Not possible, I'm afraid, Lawrence. Beyond the realm and scope of your religion. Let's just tuck those thoughts that you're having very much a supernatural experience that you shouldn't be. Let's just try and remember that, eh, Lawrence? Now I've penny dropped. Finally. Thank you, QE.
surprised
Not
me
only
anymore.
that, gravity's not real and dinosaurs aren't
I
real.
know. And you know, the people who say gravity aren't real, I have a great solution.
What?
It's a
Jump
great
off
solution.
a building?
You walk out the window on the 13th floor and test.
See? How does this not get this person banned from YouTube? He's literally suggesting people go and take their own lives, jump off a building. I mean, I've often pondered this, right? I'm going to dwell on this for a little bit. I'm sorry, guys, who want us to just plow our way through the video. It's part of a... It's one thing to say, we're like the gingers of the society that we find ourselves in, right? You're allowed to laugh at us. It's seemingly acceptable at a societal level to poke fun at flat earthers for being stupid, if you don't understand anything about the subject. Okay. It's another thing to say, if you question my faith in heliocentric gravity, what you need to do is go jump off a building. That is essentially what Lawrence Krauss has told a mainstream audience. That's what he's saying, isn't it? Don't believe in gravity? Go jump off a building. Okay. Why? So that you can show that when you're falling, you're actually at the scale that is described as 0. But you're still falling. Any idiot would know that as they plummeted to their death upon your advice, simply because they don't believe your rhetoric and dogma about a non-force that only exists in a pseudo-geometry. So if we don't believe in your pseudo-geometry from Einstein, we should jump off buildings to prove what? That when falling, you say we're at 0. Imminently hurtling towards your death, but Einstein says nothing's really happening. That's 0. Okay, proving what? That you've got a religious dogma that you will literally tell people to take their own lives over. Because that's essentially what he's told the audience to do. Don't believe in gravity, go jump off a building. What an outrage. I mean, seriously. Why has this never been highlighted in the way that I am highlighting it now before now? In terms of how this dogma, which is what it is, gets disseminated. Don't believe in gravity, go and jump off a building. Yes, Nathan, we think it's a serious issue. Sam in the chat says disgusting. Yeah, it is. It's part of what I tried to explain many a time in the past about how to sell things to people. So I don't need to labour the point about what the sex sell is. If I say sex sell, most people will have heard it in a way that's phrased slightly differently. Sex sells. That's how most people will be familiar with that term. But the sex sell is the idea of letting people be aware at a reasonably conscious level that they're seeing something that's hinting towards reproduction. Simplest example, you've got a beer commercial, you've got a girl in a bikini. That's the sex sell at the most simplistic level. Okay, but why do we have the sex sell? I'm getting somewhere with this in terms of him telling you to jump off a building, by the way. Well, because it works on a very primal part of your brain that tells you to go reproduce. When they say men think about sex all day, yeah, so do women. It's part of your instinct to reproduce. Very simple stuff. One of the other instincts you have, which is more powerful, is not to die. Who's opening their bloody mic in G+? John, please close your mic. Causing feedback. One of your instincts is not to die. Don't get run over by that bus. Make sure you keep yourself fed. Make sure you keep yourself warm. All those instincts are not dying. When somebody appeals to that notion that's ingrained in you at every cellular level you can have it ingrained at, to go and do something contrary to that, it has a profound impact on how you will take in the information. That is why this is done. Immediately make the person hearing the argument fear death as a result of their defiance against the dogma. Disagree with the dogma? Death. That's what he's just done. It's the death cell. Now, he may not know how it's been positioned, but that is what it is achieving. In the same way, it's no more sophisticated than sticking a set of tits on a beer commercial. This is him sticking a death mask on a defiance for gravity. That's all he's just done. I think it is disgusting.
Point of parliamentary procedure, sir.
That was Neil.
Point of parliamentary procedure. That wasn't John's mic. That was Neil.
Where's the eject button?
Yeah, that was Neil.
What a bitch!
No
Oh my
problem.
goodness! I'll
Did he
never
just
rob
call you a
bank with that
telltale?
guy.
Telltale.
I was waiting for
Narked on
that.
you.
Okay, back to Lawrence Krauss. At the top of the building, isn't he saying that everything goes down at this point, except a helium balloon would be released and go up? So that's the end of his everything go down.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
that's why he didn't use that example. He said, "You go out to the 13th floor and just jump off," right? Because he's just using reality to make his argument stronger. Everybody knows you jump off a building, what's going to happen, right?
Gravity.
So
No, you're heavier
Mm.
than the air, the medium. You're denser, so you're going to go right through air. That's what's happening.
exactly, and that
According to him.
just that happening is his argument being substantiated, according to him. So that's why he could just say it flippantly. Oh, shit, you don't believe in gravity? Jump off a building, guy. See what happens.
I
Right?
hate that, by the way.
So do I.
I love it.
They're all-
No,
I
no,
love
they,
it.
yeah, go ahead. Tell us why. I was going to say.
I
something.
love it because then I can just hammer them. Well, go up to the top of the building and leave a helium balloon go.
As you jump.
Yeah, I love it for that. Yeah.
So they take life as it presents itself and give it a different description to match their made-up globe that they never measured. So it's all fairy tale.
Just put a name on it, bro. I mean, a ball. If you were to ask a baller, I go to the top of the building, let go of a helium balloon. The helium balloon goes up. Why is it going up? What are they going to say? It's still gravity.
Well,
It's
we
still
know.
gravity that
Well,
allows
Evast,
this
hold on.
balloon to go up.
Let's not leave that rhetorical. So, at the point in the debate where you, as QE, disseminated, release a helium balloon from the top of the building they've told you to go and jump off and kill yourself from. Okay, so you release your helium balloon and go, okay, what are you going to say now, Mr. Krauss? Yeah, the balloon went up. Okay, so what's his rebuttal? Well, that is because the gravity is pulling all of the air around the helium balloon down. So, but for the fact that helium pulls the gas down towards the center of the mass of Earth, you wouldn't have the helium balloon displaced up, because it can only be displaced up if the gas around it's being pulled down. Or to put it another way, gas go down, go boom, boom.
Clouds.
Yeah, exactly. You've only got to point at a cloud to point out that no, gas behavior is such that it expands in all directions at a high velocity to fill whatever container it's got, which also violates your sky vacuum faith dogma, where it violates a natural law, second law of thermodynamics violation, to assert that we've got an area of volume called space with all your cosmology going on in it.
Well, they like to always misrepresent the origin of things. So where is gas originating from, Nathan?
The ground.
But it goes up.
It's coming out of the ground and making its way up. That's right. That's why there's still air on top of Everest. No, yeah, there's not very much of it. Well, because it's expanded out in all directions and away from where it was originated. So if you take the concentration of gas where it's being produced, it's going to be higher. In other words, if you stick a measurement for how much gas is coming out of that pipe that's spewing gas out of it, you go a meter away from the pipe, there's less gas. You get right over the pipe, there's more gas. You get right over the surface of Earth, where all the gas is produced, there's going to be a higher concentration, which dissipates because it's cycling. So it's filling the area of volume, but then cycling back down again. In the water, it's the cycle that we all learned in high school, right? The hydrological cycle. So it's being turned into gas at surface level, making its way up, turning into clouds, condensing back into water and falling back to the ground as a liquid, and then repeating the process. Okay, well, that's gas in that instance, only ever going up, right? It's not coming down ever. So their gas go down, go boom, boom because of gravity. Again, it violates the descriptions of how gas behaves. A bit more, Krauss?
Test your ideas. And the great thing is do it before you reproduce.
But it's a magnetism thing.
Boom. So I just said that was the death cell. I'm going to listen to that again. I was so on the money. So he immediately tells you after the death cell's been delivered in its entirety to do it before you reproduce. I've never watched this video. I didn't know that was what he was going to do. But thank you, Krauss, for absolutely validating my supposition that you were employing the death cell by immediately using what I'd contrasted it with prior, which is the sex cell. Do it before you reproduce.
That dogma.
It's very strange. How do you feel about that in
so
2017?
It's amazing. But, nothing surprises me
Not only
anymore.
that, gravity's not real and dinosaurs aren't
I
real.
know. And the people who say gravity aren't real, I have a great solution.
What?
It's a
Jump
great
off
solution.
a building?
You walk out the window of the 13th floor and test your ideas. And the great thing is do it before you reproduce.
But it's a magnetism.
So, both the death cell and the sex cell, before you reproduce, appealing to your primordial instinct to reproduce, go and kill yourself by jumping off a building, appealing to every ounce of instinct you have because you don't believe in gravity. Scummy. Just scummy tactics and magic tricks.
Yeah, that was a good call by you, though. Wow. Nice.
Yeah, know my stuff.
From a numpty dipshit that thinks he's a scientist, Mr. Something from Nothing Evotard. That's who we're dealing with right now.
Yeah, Krauss.
Is that Evotard the new electric car from Chevy, or?
That's the spark.
Thing, they believe. It's electromagnetism.
Although they do often have a big bang.
Electromagnetism.
Well, they-
Nice one.
Electro what? now?
Electromagnetism is what he said. What's that, Joe?
Why are you asking Joe?
Yeah.
Gotta ask what's it.
I'm not following what's
Who
happening
knows
here.
what
Although,
this week?
say again one more time.
Say again, what?
What are you driving at? You're asking him why? Why are you asking Joe what electromagnetism is?
Well, he brought it up.
I know, but what? And
That's what I'm saying. And let him go.
okay,
People down to the
Yeah,
the
that's what they
ground.
can think. So
Fascinating.
carry a magnet and look at it as what happens as you're falling to the earth.
Well, it's even more hilarious is
No,
okay.
stop. You see what he did? He thinks that flat earthers, Joe, another stereotype fallacy, think that electromagnetism is responsible for things falling. That's what he rewind that thing. Sorry for interruption.
I see. So where this is going, before I rewind it, I will, is that you're alluding to the idea of the feast of nonsense rhetoric of incoherent dielectric accelerative forces as a replacement for all things going down, which they do not, is how this is being prepackaged and presented to an audience 6 years ago. Ergo, when we bleat about people like Whitsitt talking about incoherent dielectric acceleration, we're just pointing out that it's essentially just something that's been parroted through the mainstream for him to gobble up and regurgitate, and he has. Is that where you were going?
No, but Bob was doing it. Bob was doing it way before Whitsitt.
Is that electromagnetism? Don't think so. Rewind it. Let's see.
electromagnetism or something like that that sucks people down to the
Yeah, that's what they
ground.
can think. So
Fascinating.
carry a magnet and look
There
at
you
it as
go.
what happens.
Yeah, that's what flat earthers think.
Yep.
All right, just the one stereotyping fallacy, eh? Okay, no, I don't think that. But you know, there are people who have obviously played completely into Lawrence Krauss's. Why would he affirm that? You know, why would he present that as a positive assertion? Stereotyping fallacy in reality. Why would he do that? Well, because it serves their interest for us to have an incoherent dielectric accelerative force, for them to argue against it like he is doing now. Yeah, we try and explain this to the flat earth community, but as I explained to Neil in the members only live stream preceding the Uncut and After show, you can't give people cognitive processing skills. You can't give them that. You can give them all the outcomes of the logical consistencies you like, and they may or may not accept them. But understanding how the logical consistencies and inconsistencies, that's fallacies, work, is something you just can't give to people. Some people just won't have that. So what do they do when they just follow along with whatever feast or nonsense garbage that they get presented with? They offer up the alternative to all things going down. No, they don't. Helium balloon, cloud. Hello? What do you mean all things going down because of incoherent dielectric acceleration? Not all things go down. It's absurd. Oh, but it's useful if you've got a position where all things go down because of gravity, to have a flat earther having a position where all things go down because of incoherent dielectric accelerative forces. They don't. Just release a helium balloon or look up a cloud, and you'll know that that isn't the case. The premise is flawed. Why the hell have flat earthers got the same bloody premise when it just benefits the globe, dickheads? It doesn't make any sense. Kiwi's been fighting against it for years. We've been ostracized from the flat earth community because we don't like us having a position we don't need to hold. Once you've debunked the notion that all things go to the ground, they don't. You don't need a position to hold. You don't have a position. There isn't one. What's that? All things go down because of incoherent dielectric acceleration, or because the Earth is moving up. Why are you taking this position? It's very useful for the Globers when they have a positive assertion and we don't, to invent one.
They say it's the answer for it, though. They say this is the answer for gravity. That's
All
what
things
drives
going
me
down.
insane.
It's the answer for all things going down. Releases helium balloon, nods head up towards the clouds. Not all things go down. So to say that incoherent dielectric accelerative forces are the reason for all things going down when not all things go down is utterly absurd and only assists in false dichotomy the globe rhetoric who has a positive claim that things are held to the side of a spinning water ball. We don't need to make a claim here.
We
Okay,
discussed.
Wait, let me tell you what they say next, because they say things don't move on their own, Neil. There has to be a force for things to start moving. They just don't move on their own.
Well, okay.
So there has to be a force rising up.
What about the clouds? So you just watch the puddle evaporate. Okay, so you're saying it's got energy from the sun to make it go up. Well, that's the end of that argument. Not all things go down. We need not explain why clouds are formed when gases go up because of an incoherent dielectric acceleration explaining the down that we don't have.
We discussed this. Go
That's
on.
not a concrete noun.
What's not clouds are not a concrete noun.
Good one, Kiwi.
Anthony took us to a red herring. He lost a bit of an argument, so rather than conceding his loss, he took us to La La Land by saying that clouds weren't concrete nouns. So we argued on that little minor point rather than. Anthony's a lawyer. That's his ball washing nature.
Well, we got the feast of nonsense from the globe side, meeting the feast of nonsense from some flat earthers. And here we are just watching them mesh. Lawrence Krauss, offered up feast of nonsense with Eratosthenes. And now Joe Rogan is saying, hey, there's some flat earthers who say this. Now, who's he talked to? It's not this panel, it's not this show, and we're flat earthers by default because the globe is non-existent. So we
What happens is
debunk
you're
the
falling-
globe. What's
Sorry.
that?
That was me accidentally pressing play.
Oh, okay. No, what I'm saying is, like when people say, "Oh, you're one of those flat earthers." No, actually, it's by default. What do you mean? Well, I went to see if I could prove a globe based on the official claims of a globe of a radius of 3959, and it's impossible for it to be a globe because the geometric horizon, which is physical and blocks the bottoms of boats and buildings. You've heard that argument, haven't you? Oh, yeah. Ships going away, disappear, bottom up. Yeah. Well, that's supposed to be at a certain place if the globe is a sphere of 3959. And it's past this limitation. So it's actually optical and it's just going away on the plane. And it's the resolution. You lose it against the deck. So it's not a globe. So if it's not a globe, what are we on? So by default, I'm a flat earther because of elevation angles to polaris.
And with that, I'm going to say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So another massive thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.